What's going on, duelists? It's your boy Nick, bringing you today on the channel a combo tutorial and test hand video for my recently updated Ursarctic deck profile for post-Duelist Nexus format. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks alike. If that's the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh that you're interested in and you enjoy, then I highly encourage you to subscribe to this channel. That way you don't miss out on any more of my uploads, because that is pretty much what I specialize in. And I'm sure there's a lot of profiles and live duels and test hands and combos on this channel that you guys are really going to enjoy if you look through some of my previous history. And I'm going to continue bringing you guys really unique content. So with that being said, I'm working my way to 1,000 subs. I'm so close. I can almost taste it. I think at time of recording, I'm maybe like 20 or so subscribers away from reaching that 1K benchmark. If you guys are watching this right now and you're not subscribed, subscribe. All it does is benefit the channel, so I know to continue bringing you guys really cool and unique content. So with that being said, I'm going to leave a link in the description below to the Ursarctic deck profile. If you haven't seen the profile, be sure to check it out. I think the deck is an absolute joy to play, and it's just a lot of fun. You know, a lot of decks now are, in my opinion, very combo focused and overall pretty sweaty. But this deck is, not only is it enjoyable to pilot, but it's also fun. Like, it's got really cool boss monsters, and I just think the mechanic that it has, or the gimmick, you know, with the reverse synchroing, where like you synchro with the difference in levels rather than the sum of levels, is honestly so unique to me. And it is the only archetype in the game that, at time of recording, has 2 level 1 synchros. Because there's no other level 1 synchros in the game besides these 2 cards here before you. This one being brand new out of Duelist Nexus, and this one, releasing initially when the archetype came out in the side set, which I believe was Ancient Guardians, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we're going to jump into some combos first with this deck. And like I said, I'm a man of my word. I promised you guys that if my deck profile got to 25 likes, I'd bring you the combos and test hands. Well, we did hit that goal, so I want to thank you guys so much for your continued support. And like I said, I wanted to bring you guys this combos and test hands. So we are about to dive headfirst into the world of Ursarctic. Now, Ursarctic, they're based off of constellations, which are the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And Ursa is the Latin word for bear, which I love Konami and their, if you want to call it puns, I guess. But it's really cool that like the name comes from some really interesting background. But what we're going to start off with here is actually a non-Ursarctic card, being a copy of Righty Driver. Now, Righty Driver in the profile I mentioned being basically the deck's normal summon. Now, you can play other cards as normal summons in this deck, because Ursarctic doesn't have a normal summon. A couple of other options you have is, I've seen people try to play the Deep Sea Diva package in the deck. Now, while you can do that, if you want to play the Diva line, in my own opinion, I feel like it takes up way too much cards in terms of deck space, because not only do you need the Diva, but you also need all the targets that she's going to summon, and you know, maybe some like Atlantean Dragoons and other stuff like that. And in my opinion, it just kind of clogs up the deck, especially when the targets you're summoning off of Diva, they're pretty much hard bricks, because if you draw like the target that you want to summon off of Diva, Diva can only special from deck. So if you draw the target that's intended for Diva to summon, you're kind of screwed. If you draw the target as well that Diva wants to summon, generally the Diva targets don't do anything in your hand, or the field or the graveyard for the most part. Now that's different when it comes to the card that Righty Driver summons, being Lefty Driver, because Lefty Driver, while it doesn't immediately get you advantage, while it's in the graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, you can banish the Lefty Driver from grave to add a Righty Driver from the deck to your hand. So this is what you would, I guess, call the Garnet, but the Garnet in this case actually gets you back into the starter on the following turn, which in my opinion is really, really unique, and that's why we play the ratio of 3 Righty and 2 Lefty for the purposes of this particular profile. Now, the reason why we focus on these cards specifically is because Righty and Lefty, Righty is a level 1 machine tuner, and Lefty is a level 2 Earth machine tuner. Now, it's a tuner and a non-tuner whose levels differ by 1. So effectively, if you normal summon Righty Driver, activate effect to special the Lefty from the hand, deck, or the graveyard, which is also something that I really like, because Diva can only special from deck. So if your target is in the graveyard or in your hand, Diva unfortunately won't be able to do anything with it, but Righty gives you a lot of flexibility in my opinion. So you special the Lefty from hand, deck, or grave. Now what's interesting here is that Lefty does have an effect that when special summoned, he can choose to gain a level to make him level 3. Now that effect is optional, you don't have to do it. But if you do it, it makes it so that you can go into different level synchros. But we'll get to that shortly. So assuming you summon Lefty and choose not to activate its effect, keeping it at level 2, you can immediately do the Ursarctic reverse synchro mechanic and synchro into either one of your 2 level 1 Ursarctic synchros. Whoops, where are they? Here they are. So these cards basically are pretty unique in the sense that while they're synchro monsters, they actually can't be synchro summoned. They must be special summoned from your extra deck by sending 2 monsters you control with a level difference of 1 to the graveyard, 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner. And both of these cards have that same summoning condition. So Lefty and Righty fulfill that condition perfectly. It's just a tuner and a non-tuner whose levels differ by 1. So you take the difference in levels rather than the sum of levels to make these cards. So assuming you're going for Polari on summon allows you to activate the Big Dipper directly from your deck, which is the Ursarctic field spell, which is really important, not only because every time a special summon occurs, you put a counter on it, and if it has 7 or more counters, when a special summon occurs, you can target a monster the opponent controls and steal it, but the actual reason why you want to run this is because you can mitigate the cost of the Ursarctics from tributing by banishing an Ursarctic from grave instead, which comes up a lot. So I just wanted to show you guys that the reason why we play Righty and Lefty, for those of you who maybe didn't understand. I mean, it might be obvious for some of you, but not everyone is as well versed in the game. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you don't want to go for the Ursarctic reverse synchro mechanic, and you want to leave Lefty as a level 2, you can actually synchro for a level 3 here, like the proper way. And the target that we actually play for that is the Shamisen Samsara Sorrow Cat. Say that fast 3 times. Basically, this card's a level 3 zombie synchro tuner, and it allows you to quick sync on your opponent's turn. And also has a pretty neat graveyard effect as well. If you guys want to pause the video so you can read it, I will let you do that. But so Lefty and Righty gets you into that. Now, if you do summon Lefty and you make it a level 3, there is also a level 4 synchro we play, of which you can make, and it's actually a pretty strong one. Some of you may know it, some of you may not, and that's Herald of the Arclight. Not only does this card give this deck a much needed Omni Negate, but if it's sent to the graveyard, whether it's by its own effect or because the opponent removed it, you can add a ritual monster from the deck to your hand off of the Herald. And now the card we play for that is actually exclusive to this deck because I haven't played it in the previous version of Ursarctics that I ran. And that is a copy of Borreload Riot Dragon. And in the profile, I go into a bit more detail as to why we run this. But basically, it's a level 7 or higher monster that the bears, the Ursarctics, contribute from your hand to special themselves. So you contribute the Riot, put it in grave. And then Riot in the graveyard has a really cool graveyard effect where it can like target itself, pop any card in your field or hand, to then add itself back to your hand. Now, why is that important? Is because Ursarctic Radiation, which is their best spell in my opinion, think of it like a Xyz change tactics for Utopia decks. Every time we special an Ursarctic from the hand or the extra deck, we remove a counter to draw a card. Beautiful. It's not once per turn, so you can draw up to 7 cards off of this, but you can only control 1 copy of Radiation. So once you exhaust all the counters off of it, Riot Dragon gives you a really nice way to pop this, to add this back to your hands for more tribute fodder, and then if you have another Radiation, you can just activate it now and continue drawing more cards, which is why I think it's cool. And that's all the stuff that Lefty and Righty can provide just by themselves. Just these 2 cards alone get you into either of the Ursarctic level 1s, gets you into a Sorrow Cat, or gets you into a Herald. Which is why I value this package in this deck over the Diva line, because in my opinion, it's more concise, and it has way more flexibility than the Diva line does. So now that we got that out the way, let's go over some combos utilizing the brand new Ursatron Alpha. Now the problem with Ursarctics is that there is no like 1 or 2 card combos. Generally with the bears, you need at least 3 cards to get started. Now I know that sounds wild, but like I said, the deck is actually pretty strong once it gets rolling, so just keep that in mind. So it doesn't really matter. We'll just start with these 3 bears. One of them being Ursatron Alpha specifically. So we got Megapolar and McPolar. In the grand scheme, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have this and a Major Bear. Major Bears are the Tuner level 8 Beast Warrior ones, and Minor Bears are the level 7 Beast non-Tuner ones for reference. But we're going to start with this 3-card line. We're going to activate Megapolar in hand, tributing McPolar to special summon itself. Now, because we control an Ursarctic monster, we're going to actually go ahead and use the Ultimate Bright Knight Ursatron Alpha's in hand effect to not only special summon itself, but also search for an Ursarctic spell trap from deck to hand in the process. It's all one effect, which I think is great. So it activates in hand, and you know, it just, once it hits the field, you get your search. Like, it's not two separate effects where it summons and then searches like McPolar was. It's all one effect, which I like. So you're going to activate special, and now we're going to search for a copy of Radiation here. And this is where you're going to start seeing Radiation put in tons of work. Let me real quick grab some dice, because I usually use dice to keep track of the counters on the card. So forgive me while I grab some dice. Alright, so we're going to activate Radiation, and upon activation you place 7 counters on it. Sorry if it's a little hard to see, but you know, you guys get the gist. So now, what we have here is a tuner and a non-tuner whose levels differ by 1, so I'm sure you can guess what that means. We're going to do the Ursarctic reverse synchro mechanic, and we are going to make one of our, two level 1 synchros. We'll go for Ursarctic Polari in this case. We usually go for Polari first, because Polari gets you to the field spell, which is important. Polar Star, while great, in my opinion, is more beneficial if we already have access to the field spell. Now, I know a lot of you guys will probably wonder, well, why aren't you playing more copies of the field spell if it's that important? You know, why are you just playing one copy in the main? The reason for that is because the Ursarctic field spell, while good, isn't a starter nor an extender. It's not like, you know, a field spell where on activation it gets you a search or gets you some kind of immediate advantage. It's a card that only benefits you while you're already going. Like, if your hand is bad, you know, like, because you bricked, this card isn't doing you any favors in said hand. Like, it's only beneficial in hands where you're already, like, doing well. And that's why I feel like playing duplicates is bad, because you can very easily brick on this. Ursarctic is a deck that needs to draw a decent amount of monsters to be able to play, since all of your main deck cards tribute a monster for cost in order for you to do anything. So if you're clogging your hand with too many copies of spells and traps, well, you're probably going to have a bad time and consistency issues. Now, we play this as a one-of because Polari can activate it from deck, and if the one-of we play gets outed, Radiation's end phase effect, which triggers on each end phase, so mine and the opponent's, can recycle this back into the deck. So I don't feel the need to play duplicates. Especially because once you have the one Big Dipper on field already, the second and possibly third copies are pretty much irrelevant. They're just dead cards in hand. So that's my logic as to why I just play one, so hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and quote-unquote special summon Polari. Hopefully you guys can see. And now we're going to resolve these chain links backwards. So we're actually going to do Radiation is chain link 1 and Polari is chain link 2. That way Polari can pull the field spell out of the deck before we get our draw of Radiation. Now, why is that important? It's because even though we're just playing one copy, and I know the chances of this are really slim, we do not want to draw the field spell before Polari can activate it from the deck. Like I said, it's a one-of, and the odds of us doing that are slim, but the possibility is there, and it has happened to me before in testing, and it basically makes us whiff on our draw, which I don't want. So we are going to go chain link 1 Radiation to pull the counter, chain link 2 Polari, excuse me, to activate Dipper from deck. So we're going to go ahead and do that. If I can find it. There's Dipper. Now, you know, we're going to shuffle up real quick. I'll offer my opponent a cut, which basically is cut myself, since I don't have an opponent right now. And now we can draw our card at resolution. And now we drew into a usable card, whereas if we did that backwards, if we draw into the field spell off Radiation, now Polari can't activate it from deck because it's not in our deck, it's in our hand. And then we pretty much whiff on the draw. So this way it's a lot better. So now we have, remember, we started as a 3-card combo, okay? So bear with me on this. What we're going to do here now is we're going to utilize Polari's effect to... Actually, I guess there's a couple ways we can do this. Why don't we do this? Instead of using Polari's secondary effect, why don't we just go Big Dipper's effect here? Or not Big Dipper's effect, Megapolar, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Getting all mixed up here on my names. We're going to activate Megapolar in hand to tribute and special. Now you're probably wondering, how can we do that if there is no monster in hand to tribute? Well, this circles back to what I was talking about with the field spell, allowing us to mitigate once per turn the cost of tributing by banishing an Ursarctic monster from our graveyard instead. So we're going to activate Megapolar, but mitigate the cost of tributing by using Big Dipper's effect to banish a bear from grave. So we'll banish the McPolar in grave, summoned the Megapolar from hand. We're going to remove a counter off of Radiation to get a draw. And then we're going to add a counter to Dipper, because every time a monster special summoned, we put a counter on it. So we get a free draw here. Now, because we control a tuner and a non-tuner level 1 synchro, we can actually special summon our Ursarctic synchros here. We can either go for Septentrion or Grand Chariot. Generally, for going first, I usually make Septentrion, because Grand Chariot you usually want to go like second with to break a board. And since we're going first with this particular combo, Grand Chariot's not needed. So we're going to make Septentrion, increase the counter on Dipper, and then we're going to pull the counter off of Radiation to then draw into another card. Now you can kind of see how this starts to work out. Now we have our boss monster on field, we're drawing more free cards, and depending on what else is in our hand, we could continue extending, obviously. So that, you know, again, the combos are very straightforward. You know, yes, it does require a lot of setup, but once the deck does get rolling, it's, like I said, really difficult to stop. And that's pretty much how this deck works for the most part. You just try and get to Radiation and then abuse the living crap out of the draw power that it provides, given that the deck definitely needs it. So those are pretty simple combos. Again, it's easier to do test hands with this deck than it is to show you combos, just because you continue playing based on what you draw off Radiation. So, which obviously is, you know, it's RNG. So you have no way to like really show off what the deck can do. So because of that, we're gonna go into an actual test hand now. I'm gonna pile shuffle the deck, that way you guys know that I'm not like cheating or trying to stack anything. And like I said, if you're watching this video and you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Do me that favor. I'm working my way to 1,000 subs. You know, if you guys are here and you're still watching, obviously you are invested and this is content that you like. So if you don't want to miss any more content like this, subscribe so you don't miss. Like I said, all it does is benefit the channel in the long run, and I appreciate all of your guys' support along the way. So we're gonna cut, or not cut, but shuffle. Now we'll cut, and we're gonna get started on our very first test hand. Now this hand is gonna simulate us going first. So we drew in a Megapolar, drew in a Kashtira Fenrir, drew into Mikpolar, drew in a Crystal Girl, and we drew into Ultimate Bright Knight Ursatron Alpha. Honestly, going first, this hand is absolutely cracked. So what are we gonna do here? Well, obviously, since we control no monsters, we're gonna special Fenrir, activate Fenrir, you know, use Fenrir as like a kind of a bait to fish out any hand traps potentially. But what's nice about Fenrir is, you know, if they don't interact with it, Fenrir is just gonna add another Fenrir. Now, why is that great? Well, not only does Fenrir kind of act like a pseudo minor bear in this particular case, but Fenrir adds us another copy of a monster we contribute from hand to special another bear. So that's really good as far as card economy goes. Plus, Fenrir himself is just a house and really annoying for your opponent to have to deal with, but that's neither here nor there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to activate Megapolar, and we're just going to actually tribute the Fenrir that we searched off the Fenrir, and we're going to special Megapolar, okay? Now what we're going to do here is we are going to, because we control an Ursarctic, we're going to activate the effect of Ultimate Bright Knight Ursatron Alpha in hand, specialing itself, and then searching for an Ursarctic spell or trap, in which case we can grab Departure, but since we already have a lot of names, we're going to grab Radiation because we value the draws. Now this is something that previously wasn't possible before, because our spells and traps weren't searchable, believe it or not. They were, but only through Septentrion, which can only do it if the opponent specials a monster, which, let's face it, that's not very consistent. You know, you can't say that that's a reliable way to search your back row. This card fixes a lot of the issues with the deck. Not all of them, but it's a start. But now that we can search stuff like Radiation, it definitely increases the consistency as well as the ceiling. So now we're going to activate Radiation, placing our 7 counters on it. Okay? Now we're going to do the Ursarctic special, reverse synchroing into, like I said, we usually want to go for Polari first since we want access to our field spell. So now we're going to resolve this backwards. We're going to go Radiation Chainlink 1, Polari Chainlink 2 to activate the field spell from deck. So we're going to go ahead and grab Big Dipper. Then we're going to, you know, shuffle, offer the opponent, in quotations, the quote, or the cut, excuse me. And then we'll draw our free card off of Radiation. Okay? Now, what we can do here, we can still definitely keep playing. We're nowhere near finished. So we're going to actually activate Mikpolar's effect. How do we want to do this? There's a couple ways we can do this. I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? Let's use Polari's effect. It states we contribute a level 7 or higher higher monster for cost to add to our hand or special summon an Ursarctic from our graveyard. So, let's see here. Do we want to do that? Thinking on the fly. You know what? No. Why don't we go McPolar in hand? Let's use Big Dipper's effect to mitigate cost by banishing a bear. And let's banish the Ursatron Alpha from graveyard instead of tributing, and we'll special the McPolar from our hand. And that'll put a counter on Dipper. And then now we'll go Chain Link 1 Polar, Chain Link 2 Radiation, pulling a counter off that to get a draw. So we'll get our draw, and then off of Polar, we will search for an Ursarctic monster. We'll probably grab another Major Bear. In this case, yeah, we'll grab Billis. So, moving on. Now what we can do is we can actually use Polari's effect. On field, it states we contribute a level 7 or higher monster to add to our hand or special an Ursarctic from our graveyard. So we're going to do that by tributing the Megapolar in our hand. And now we can special summon the Megapolar from grave. That'll put another counter on Dipper, but it won't pull a counter off Radiation, because Radiation only counts if an Ursarctic is specialed from your hand or extra deck specifically, so keep that in mind. Now what we can do is we can actually do the Ursarctic reverse synchro mechanic again to make our brand new level 1 synchro, fresh out of Duelist Nexus, Ursarctic Polar Star. Now that we have Polar Star, we put another counter on the field spell. Again, keep in mind, every time a monster is special, the field spell gets a counter. When that field spell has at least 7 counters, if another monster is special summoned while we control an Ursarctic synchro, we can target a monster the opponent controls and take control of it permanently. So that's what the counters on Dipper are for. We'll pull a counter off Radiation, since we did special a bear from the extra deck, and we'll get another free draw, which is absolutely beautiful because we drew into a normal summon. And keep in mind, we haven't normal summoned yet. So now what we can do is we can normal summon Righty Driver, activate Righty Driver's effect to special summon a Lefty Driver. So we'll get that on the field now. Putting another counter on Dipper. That puts us at 4 counters on Dipper currently. And I think we're going to keep Lefty Driver as a level 2. In this case, we're not going to make it a level 4 to make Herald. We're going to keep it at level 2, because we're going to synchro now to make the Shamisen, Samsara, Sorrow Cat. Say that fast 3 times. Make the Sorrow Cat, putting another counter on Dipper. That puts us at 5. Now, Sorrow Cat's going to allow us to quick sync on the opponent's turn, which obviously is really, really strong. But now what we can do is we can use Polar Star's effect. Now, Polar Star states, now we can mitigate the cost with the field spell, but we've already done that this turn, so unfortunately we can't do it for Polar Star, even though Polar Star is not once per turn, because you would ideally be able to activate effect, mitigate cost with Dipper, and then activate effect again to then actually tribute itself in another card, which is cool. But in this case, we're just going to activate its effect now, tributing itself and a level 8 Ursarctic from hand or field, to then special summon an Ursarctic Synchro from our extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So we tributed the Mega Billis from our hand, and now we're going to special summon a copy of the Ursarctic Septentrion to our field, who is now summoned off the Polar Star, which means that Septentrion is a floodgate for monsters summoned from the extra deck with and without levels. Basically being a skill drain for any monster summoned from your opponent's extra deck, which is crazy. We're going to put another counter on Dipper, and then pull another counter off Radiation to get us another draw, basically. Drew into Departure. That is absolutely cracked. Now what we're going to do is activate Departure, getting rid of Crystal Girl in our hand, to the graveyard, to then search for 2 more Ursarctics. We're going to grab a Megatannis, because we're trying to grab bears that we haven't activated yet, and a Mictannis. We are going off here, ladies and gentlemen. Now what we're going to do is we are going to activate Megatannis by tributing Mictannis, special summoning Megatannis, putting our 7th counter on the field spell, Field spell is now at 7 counters officially. So now, if the opponent specials anything, whether it's our turn, their turn, we can pull all the counters off and steal their monster, which is great. Then we're going to remove a counter off radiation to give us another draw. Drew into another Mega Tennis. That's actually pretty nice. Now what we can do here is we can actually synchro now, properly synchro, using Mega Tennis and a Polari for a 9, level 9 synchro. And we have 2 options for that. Navy Dragon Mech, which is usually better used for going second, and we have a Ravenous Croco-Dragon Architect, which is nice because it is a quick effect disruption on the opponent's turn. I'm not going to bother putting more counters on Dipper because the minimum all we need is 7 and we've already hit that goal. We're going to activate Architect's effect to draw a card when summoned. We drew into McBillis, actually, which is really nice. Thinking on if we want to do anything else here. We might actually use McBillis here. Activate McBillis, tributing Megatannis in hand. Special summoning the Billis. Pulling a counter off of Radiation to then draw into another card. Drew into another Megatannis. Is that triple back-to-back Megatannis? That's funny. And I think we're going to go ahead and end our turn here. We'll use the graveyard or the end phase effect of Radiation to target an Ursarctic card engrave and place it back inside the deck. Are we done there? Let me think about this, actually. We could still extend, actually. Hold on. Before we go to our end phase, let's activate the effect of Crystal Girl in our graveyard, because this is something that we haven't discussed yet. It states that if we control a level 5 or higher water monster and this card is engraved, we can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So we're going to activate that effect and special summon it from the graveyard to trigger its on-field effect on summon. If this card is normal or special summoned, we can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, add a level 5 or higher water monster from deck to hand. So we're going to special Crystal Girl from grave, activate its effect to then get a search at end phase, kind of like a Bestial Magnuma. And Crystal Girl allows us to search for any Ursarctic monster from deck to hand, which is nice. Thinking if there's anything else we want to do here. We could actually synchro further. We could go Sorrow Cat, who's a level 3 tuner, plus the McBillis into a level 10 synchro like Baron. Or we can actually go into a level 11 synchro, something like the Zero Trishula Zero, because then that would be 3, 7 is 10, plus 1 is 11. We can make this, if you want, banish 3 cards the opponent controls, which is really nice. Or we can wait to use the Sorrow Cat on the opponent's turn. It really just depends, honestly. I think in this particular instance, we might as well just go all in. So instead of using Sorrow Cat to sync on the opponent's turn, let's just sync with it now and just make a Baron de Fleur because, you know, why not? It's Baron. That puts the Sorrow Cat in the graveyard. Now I think what we'll do is we'll go end phase. We'll resolve the effect of Crystal Girl, getting us a search for an Ursarctic. And we usually want to grab off of that a disruption, but I'm realizing... No, we already have it in hand. So I guess, yeah, we can just grab another Major Bear, because at least they're disruptions during the opponent's turn. So why don't we just grab a copy of Megapolar to hand? And then at end phase, we'll use Radiation's effects to then take an Ursarctic monster in our graveyard, or an Ursarctic card, and put it back inside the deck. So why don't we just go ahead and cycle back our copy of Polari back into the extra. Which is, again, part of the reason why we just play 1 Polar Star, 1 Polari, because we can cycle everything back. So there's almost no reason to play duplicates. Because this lets us cycle back on each player's end phase, so mine and the opponent. So on the opponent's end phase, we can cycle back the Polar Star as well and have both of our level 1 synchros back in deck ready to go for next turn. And that's pretty much going to wrap up that combo. Now, what is this board? We have a pop off the Crocosaur, Croco-Dragon. We have a Kashtira Fenrir on field. We have an Omni Negate through Baron de Fleur. And then we have Septentrion, who was summoned using Polar Star. So like I said, it's basically a skill drain for any monster the opponent summons from their extra deck, whether it has a level or not. In addition to that, we also amassed our 7 counters on Dipper, which means that if the opponent special summons while we control an Ursarctic Synchro, we can remove all counters from this card, target that monster, and steal it permanently. And then we also have a Book of Moon and an MST effectively in our hand to throw at the opponent. Also, if they do special summon, Septentrion also lets us search for an Ursarctic card. So this is basically the updated version of Ursarctic post-Nexus. So like I said, the deck, once it gets rolling, it gets crazy. I mean, this end board is pretty impressive, honestly, in my own opinion. and we have a lot of follow-up and a lot of disruption as well. So that's going to wrap it up, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the combos and the test hand for the Ursarctic post Duelist Nexus. Like and subscribe. I will leave a link in the description down below for the deck profile. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already. Like I said, like the video, comment what you guys thought, and stay tuned for more really cool and unique Yu-Gi-Oh content. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Again, this is Nick, hitting that end phase. Peace.